Facing down his critics, Cameron's big sell on Europe. But as he tries to persuade MPs, it's claimed at least 5 members of his own cabinet will campaign for a British exit.
I'm not asking people to twist themselves in different directions and say things they don't believe, but actually it's in the country's interest, whatever your view in the end, that we get the best possible deal to put in front of the British people.
Also tonight, it's official. Lord Lucan is dead. A death certificate is finally issued.
Tackling the Zika crisis, a new curb on blood donations here in Britain.
And the badly injured war veterans rowing towards history tonight.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. David Cameron was warned today that as many as 5 of his own cabinet ministers will be fighting for Britain to leave the European Union. In a spirited defence of his draft deal, the Prime Minister admitted that it was not perfect, but it would, he told MPs, make the British position stronger and better. Labour's Jeremy Corbyn mocked the renegotiations as a Tory party drama. But while plenty of backbench critics made their views heard, any big guns among Conservative opponents kept their powder extremely dry. Our political correspondent Libby Vina has the story.
A draft deal that David Cameron argues offers the best of both worlds. But he hasn't yet convinced all his cabinet. And today some were still reluctant to say where they stood.
Very nice to see you.
Right now, do you think cabinet ministers should be allowed to campaign right now to leave the EU?
Boris Johnson is also hedging his bets.
I think the Prime Minister is making the best of a bad job. Okay? I think it's probably more or less what I said yesterday, which is that most people looking at this will think there's a lot more to do.
The Prime Minister headed to the Commons to explain why he thought he really had done rather a lot.
In the parts of Europe that work for us and out of those that don't. In the single market, free to travel around Europe, part of an organisation where cooperation on security and trade can make Britain and its partners safer and more prosperous, but with guarantees that we will never be part of the euro, never be part of Schengen.
His negotiation in reality is a Tory party drama that's being played out in front of us as we see at the moment.
A drama that's only likely to get more intriguing. Leader of the Commons, Chris Grayling, has already said he wants Britain to leave the EU. It's thought Work and Pensions Secretary Ian Duncan-Smith agrees. Others who could join them are Northern Ireland Secretary Theresa Villiers, Culture Secretary John Whittingdale and Employment Minister Priti Patel.
I think 4 or 5 will openly campaign for exit. I think there'll be a number of junior ministers who come forward, some of whom might be a little bit of a surprise, to campaign for exit.
For now, those ministers are keeping their powder dry, leaving it up to Tory backbenchers to make their feelings plain about exactly how much progress David Cameron has made.
The thin gruel has been further watered down, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend has a fortnight, I think, in which to salvage his reputation as a negotiator.
A fortnight in which those watching from the sidelines could move centre stage. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, speaking after today's Commons debate, Mr Cameron told ITV News he would not ask any cabinet opponents to, as he put it, say things they don't believe. He told our political editor, Robert Peston, that ministers don't have to pretend they like his deal.
Hello, very good to see you. Yeah, well, yeah, not too... At home with the Prime Minister. Not quite in the bunker, but facing a barrage of criticism from press and his own colleagues.
Well, people want to look for holes and problems. And,
for his proposed new deal for Britain with the European Union.
Everybody happy?
Good, thank you.
Great. How do you reconcile this extraordinary gap between you who say you've achieved a great deal and your critics who say you've achieved nothing?
Well, I think Europe raises huge emotions, and there are many people who want to leave the European Union come what may, and so they were never going to be particularly interested in a deal that I brought back. Now, I'm not claiming to have solved all the problems. I would just say to people, look at what's been achieved. This addresses some of the main concerns the British people have about Europe, that it's too bureaucratic, it's too much of a political union, it's not fair on those outside the Eurozone, immigration's too high.
Now, a number of those in your cabinet who will vote to leave the EU say they're a bit fed up with you because they thought there was an understanding there'd be no campaigning until the cabinet's formal decision. And they believe you've started campaigning already.
Well, the negotiation isn't finished. We don't know the full nature of the deal that we will get. So everyone in the government is committed to get the very best possible deal for Britain.
Is there any chance that you'll let your more Eurosceptic ministers speak their minds?
I'm not asking people to twist themselves in different directions and say things they don't believe, but actually it's in the country's interest, whatever your view in the end, that we get the best possible deal to put in front of the British people.
Most people reading your manifesto took it as meaning no payment of in-work benefits to migrants for 4 years and no payment of child benefit to the families of migrants if they live outside this country. You have compromised, haven't you?
People said you'll never get a 4-year break on benefits, but it's 4 years that we've got. People said you'll never end something for nothing, but we have. So I'm happy to be judged.
But you have given ground, in other words.
It's a negotiation.
But do you think you will get this deal?
I very much hope so. There are 27 other members, but I think I can point out these things will improve Britain's place in Europe, they will improve the European Union, they'll make us more competitive, they'll deliver the things that really matter.
David Cameron, and Robert joins us now. Robert, how big a battle, negotiations still to carry on, of course, but how big a battle is he facing within his own party over this deal?
Well, there was a wonderful moment today in the House of Commons when David Cameron looked at the Labour benches and told Labour MPs that he'd delivered via his negotiations with the EU much of what they'd been asking for in their election manifesto. What does that mean? It means he is depending on Labour support, both in Parliament but also more significantly in the country, to get the deal through the referendum. Now, within his own party, a majority of Tory members, according to opinion polls, want out of the EU. Within his own government, there are some very significant ministers who want out of the EU. Ministers like Chris Grayling, the Leader of the House, Ian Duncan-Smith, the Work and Pensions Minister. So the big question for David Cameron today is whether he can maintain cabinet unity till those negotiations are finished. I have to say, having talked today to ministers who are opposed to staying in the EU, they are finding it very difficult to keep quiet.
All right, Robert, thank you very much indeed.
Now, his body has never been found and what happened to him remains a mystery. But a significant chapter in the saga of the missing Playboy peer, Lord Lucan, was finally closed today.
After vanishing in 1974 following the murder of his children's nanny, Lord Lucan has officially been pronounced dead. As Juliet Bremner reports, his son can now inherit his titles.
After more than 41 years, George Bingham hoped to bring to an end the speculation and rumour surrounding the disappearance of his father, Lord Lucan. Lucky Lucan, as the aristocrat was known, hasn't been seen since shortly after November the 7th, 1974, when the body of his children's nanny was found in their Belgravia home. Sandra Rivet had been beaten to death with a lead pipe. Lord Lucan's estranged wife was also attacked. He became the prime suspect. But despite extensive searches around Newhaven, where his blood-stained car was discovered, there was no sign of him. Today, his son was granted a death certificate and the right to call himself the 8th Earl of Lucan.
Relieved, frankly. It was a very sensible verdict. It's been 41 years. We've all seen the most extraordinary claims and tales over these 41 years. To some extent, it's been a bit of a jaunt, but at other times it's been very difficult.
The theories regarding Lord Lucan's fate include that he was smuggled abroad, possibly to Africa, assisted by wealthy gambling friends. There have been unconfirmed sightings of him in India, Australia, even living in a car in New Zealand. Others believe he took his own life in the English Channel as he escaped, or most bizarrely, shot himself and then got a friend to feed his remains to a tiger in a bid to disappear completely.
My own personal view, and it was one I took, I think, as an 8-year-old boy, was that he's unfortunately been dead since that time. I would think it in the circumstances, I think it's quite possible that he saw his life at an end, regardless of guilt or otherwise, of being dragged through the courts and through the media would have destroyed his personal life, his career, and the chances of getting custody of his children back.
With years of police inquiries exhausted, the victim's son worries he'll never see justice.
No closure for me. Sandra Rivet was still beaten to death, wasn't she, by somebody, and we will have closure when we can get to the truth.
Both men agree that the missing peer is now dead, but how or when that happened looks set to remain a mystery. Well, the file into this case remains open, but the court was told that there are no new lines of police inquiry. The evidence that was gathered from this basement back in 1974 didn't allow them to identify any other suspect. And if things remain as they are at the moment, it's likely to still be an unsolved crime.
All right, Juliet, thank you very much.
Police investigating the murder of a woman and her 2 children have found the body of their suspected killer on cliffs in Anglesey. Geraldine Newman, her 11-year-old daughter and 6-year-old son were found at their home in West Yorkshire yesterday. The body is believed to be that of her estranged husband, Paul Newman.
And a man has fallen to his death from an airliner after an explosion blew a hole in the side of the cabin shortly after takeoff. The jet made an emergency landing at Mogadishu airport in Somalia. Investigators believe the blast was caused by a bomb.
Blood donors who've travelled to countries affected by the Zika virus are to be barred from giving blood for a month after returning to the UK. Officials describe the move as a precautionary measure. Well, Emma Murphy is here. And what can you tell us about this?
Well, it's based on concern about how the Zika virus is spread. And so out of a measure of precaution, NHS England, as well as the Blood Service in Scotland, have said that they want to have a 28-day deferral period so that people who have been to any of those countries that have been named, there are 25 countries in all, Mexico, Central, Southern America and also the Caribbean, will have to wait until they are able to give blood again. Now, they say that this is purely precautionary, but clearly it is something that is going to cause concern. It's important to say that there is not a great concern about the blood supply because certain numbers of these countries already have a deferral because of the risk of malarial spread, and that's why people can't do it then. The other thing to point out is to do with organ donation, and there has been a warning that there will also be a delay on that for 28 days. People won't be able to give their organs if they have travelled to countries and showed any symptoms.
All right, Emma Murphy, thank you.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, a special report on the misery of Syria's children as peace talks falter.
And rowing for a record, the British military amputee is about to make history. Well, you can find out why, along with the rest of the day's news, after this short break. Join us then. And welcome back. Aid organisations are gathering for a major conference in London tomorrow aimed at stepping up international efforts to help humanitarian crisis in Syria. Since the conflict there began in 2011, more than 320,000 people are estimated to have died. More than 20,000 were children. Another 1.5 million people have been injured, many of those children too. Our correspondent Dan Rivers now on the horrors endured by one child caught up in Syria's brutal war.
For most of his short life, Nur Atut has known nothing but war. And now this 8-year-old's future has been irrevocably changed. An ordinary boy surviving in extraordinary times. But this is the price he's paid. Nur lost both his legs after a suspected cluster bomb hit his house.
كنت بالحارة سمعت عن قدر نزل في لجوا نزل الدرج هيك بس الدرج هيك شوي.
For 2 weeks, Noor's father, Abu Haytham, has watched his son battle to stay alive in this makeshift clinic. At the family's home, he shows where the small suspected cluster bomb hit the yard, peppering the wall with shrapnel.
هي المظلة تبع الصاروخ اللي صاب ابني فيه عنقودي يعني.
Here, Noor's shoes given to him days before an attack, which has robbed him so cruelly of the need for them.
الجمعية الإنسانية سلمته بوط وأواعي هو وأخواته هذول أواعي من الجمعية. بعد ما سلمته البوط بشي 5 أيام لبسه 5 أيام بس هذا بوط جديد.
Inside, Noor's father explains that there's no electricity. Candles are their only source of light, and they have little fuel for their stove. He wants to bring his son home, but this is no place for a boy with such catastrophic injuries. Noor's sisters can't go to school. The streets of Douma are simply too dangerous. It is a pitiful situation with no escape for the thousands of children stranded in this siege. These are images that should shame humanity. After almost 5 years, this is the result of the world's collective failure to end Syria's war. But Noor's bravery is astounding. He wants these images of his legs to be broadcast. A defiant symbol of survival and courage in a war that offers so little hope. Dan Rivers, ITV News.
Well, meanwhile, while children like Noor suffer, a conference has been taking place in Austria to try to bring some kind of peace to Syria. The talks were suspended for 3 weeks tonight, with little sign of progress.
Water bills are to rise by an average of £2 across England and Wales over the next year. The announcement comes despite a recent report claiming households are paying too much for their supply.
An appeal by the owners of a Christian-run bakery involved in the so-called gay cake discrimination case has been adjourned for 3 months. Asher's Bakery in Belfast was ordered to pay £500 for refusing to make a cake featuring a pro-gay marriage slogan last year.
And a man has posted this video online at the moment he was knocked off his bike in a hit-and-run near a roundabout in Nottingham. The cyclist posted the clip to highlight what he claims is a lack of justice. Charges against 2 suspects were dropped through lack of evidence. The Victoria and Albert Museum in London is one of Britain's richest and most renowned, but today it was accused of taking part in an act of cultural vandalism. The rows erupted over plans to move thousands of historic photographs there from Bradford's National Media Museum. From Bradford, Damon Green.
They're part of one of the most important collections of images in the world. 400,000 photographs, from works of art to historic artefacts, including the oldest photographic negative in existence.
Can you say?
But soon they'll leave their home at the National Media Museum in Bradford to go to London. The people in charge say they simply don't have the space or the money to put everything on display here in Yorkshire. Sending the pictures to the capital means more people will see them.
We will continue to hold collections of national significance. So we'll continue to hold nationally significant collections of photography, the National Cinematography Collection and the National Television Collection. So absolutely, we're absolutely a national museum.
They had 450,000 visitors here last year, but admit it's a struggle to maintain those numbers and care for the objects in their collection. By transferring the Royal Photographic Society's pictures to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the museum believes it can concentrate on science and technology. But many in the city say this place could have kept the collection if there had been the will.
Well, we haven't got the capacity simply because we haven't got the resources and the funding to do so. Had we had those resources and funding, we're more than capable to actually attract people to our city, and that's been illustrated over the last 18 months where we've actually increased the number of visitors to the museum here.
What I don't want to see is the museum, which is a national museum and important to the city, important to the region, to be moved away from Bradford and to the south just by stealth.
There are plans for a futuristic new gallery of light and sound for next year. The museum says it's looking forwards, but as always, something has to make way for the future, and that is the past. Damon Green, ITV News in Bradford.
And finally, the finish line is in sight tonight for 4 ex-servicemen whose epic row across the Atlantic will mark an achievement that never has been done before.
Yes, when they reach Antigua tomorrow, it will be the first time a crew entirely made up of amputees completes the gruelling ocean crossing. And as they told our reporter Neil Connery, it's proof there is life after injury.
Only one more day to go.
After 3,000 miles of gruelling ocean rowing, this all-amputee crew are heading for the record books. 8 weeks battling everything the Atlantic could throw at them. The 4 ex-servicemen are determined to show there are no limits, as their crew leader told me a short time ago.
Now, there is a life after injury. We're all injured under completely different circumstances in different parts of the world. You know, we're all military guys, so not all of us were wounded in combat, you know. So we would love to send out a message to people that there is a life beyond injury. You can achieve great things, you know, if you set your mind to it.
The Road to Recovery team set off on December the 20th from La Gomera in the Canary Islands. For 46 days, they've been making their way across the Atlantic, along with 28 other teams, all able-bodied. They spent Christmas Day 400 miles south, heading towards Cape Verde. And now they're just hours from their final destination, Antigua.
Yeah, it's quite weird actually taking legs off for the last time and hopping on board, and this will be it for the next 50-odd days. You know, it's just
Those first few strokes feel a long time ago. Now the team have another destination in mind after the finish.
I'm afraid it's going to have to be straight to the bar for an ice-cold beverage or two. The rum punch and pina coladas in Antigua are absolutely something special.
And who can blame them? Neil Connery, ITV News.
Well, to learn more about their remarkable crossing and the stories behind each rower, you can go to our website, itv.com/news.
Yeah, almost there. Good luck to them. That's it for now. Julie Etchingham is here at 10.
From all the team here, the Evening News team. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.